Hey guys, I did a work session yesterday, but I wasn't able to record it. Um, so I'm going to go over with you what I did do yesterday before we continue with. I'm going to work a bit on the issue 3 cover today. But first, I wanted to show you. I believe we left off on the issue 2 cover. The tree section wasn't done. The shade wasn't done. Um, I think the figures were done, and so was the statue, but most of the rest wasn't. So let's go over here to issue 2 inks. See how I created this folder here? So because I have so many layers, because it's 6 covers, and each figure I've got layers to figure out the form and shape of and all that. So I have to make sure I have these folders to make everything easy enough to figure out. So when I last left you, I was working on, pardon me, the tree. And I was showing you how I could copy and paste some of the leaves around here to use elsewhere and change the form and shape. And then, of course, you draw on top of them afterwards. So, and you add other details so they no longer become recognizable shapes. I think I grabbed this and repeated it over here, but it doesn't call out to you unless you see it. It's funny, when I look at these two, this was drawn and this was drawn, but I kind of drew them the same way. So they almost look like the same thing, but I don't think they are. So sometimes you can copy and paste your own work, move it around so that not so that you're fooling anybody, but because you want to work efficiently. You want to be able to copy and paste something like tree leaves and stuff so you can just move faster. But then you also want to touch it up enough that the artificiality of it doesn't call any attention to itself. That's the thing with any shortcut. I'm all for it to save you time, to save me time, to meet my deadlines, and to be able to move forward, as long as it doesn't call attention to itself. And that's something I repeat all the time about using photo reference, whether it's a photo that you're looking at and taking cues from, or it's a photo that you're actually tracing. Like I traced this statue here, but I think in the end it still looks like my style. It doesn't stick out like a sore thumb. It doesn't call any attention to itself. So after I finish these leaves manually for the most part, with a little bit of copy and paste, the background of the tree, I then use something I talked about before in Clip Studio, and I'm sure they have this as well in other programs like Procreate. There are brushes that will simulate objects for you. Here you can see these are maple leaves and other sort of leaves and grass that I can, let me just show you here. I'll get rid of this. Grab this husky maple. Let's create a layer. And you can change the size of these and thickness of it. And it'll give you different effects. I don't like to use it all by itself, typically because it doesn't look like the way I draw, really. And it draws too much attention to itself. So what I did was I did a combination of this husky maple leaf and this other foliage. You can kind of see in here. And the reason I did that is it's really in the far background of what's in focus. What's in focus is the tree and these leaves. Most likely, and I left these like a lighter gray, that's usually to indicate a color hold. So Taki will probably do these leaves back here in the form of, say, it'll be like a dark green or a light green or a light blue or something that really pushes it into the background of the tree. So that's how I finished that. And again, it's not supposed to be the focus, so I don't mind using something really artificial back here. Yeah, and I'm happy with it. I wish I had time to draw every freaking leaf on the tree, but let's be realistic. I don't. So that's a trick for you guys. The other thing I really like doing was, I'm going to talk to Taki about this to see if she can make this effect even better. the shadows that I put on the tree here, I want it to fade. I want it to be like lighter at the bottom and darker at the top. I'll see if I still have the reference for this. I think I might have gotten rid of it. It's the panels that we actually finished. Oh, Danny DeVito. So this was reference that I was using for the mob boss here. I just wanted, this is an example of using photo reference where I'm just eyeballing it. I'm not actually trying to copy Danny DeVito or his pants here. It's more just sort of his proportion and the way he's standing, the way he holds himself. So that's another way you can use photo reference besides tracing or whatever. There's a bunch of different ways. There's no wrong way to use photo reference as far as I'm concerned. Yeah, I think unfortunately I got rid of, but you'll see it in the finished colors of the book. Yeah. Oh wait, maybe here. No, that's issue 2. Yeah, this is issue 2. Okay. Ah, here we go. Let me shut the rest of this off. So this is an effect that we did on the interior of the issue. So we've got all these like grapevines and branches that are cast over their face, and you can see there's a gradation. So it's darker here and it's lighter here. And I copied and pasted it on here because I just wanted to remind myself when I was working on it that this is how I wanted to approach it. So sometimes I'll keep a layer of reference somewhere, not just to copy something or to draw something, but to just remind myself what I'm doing. Sometimes it could be the character, be reminded of what the color of the character looks like or what the shape of the character looks like. I had trouble with his face because I just hadn't drawn him in a long time, so I didn't get his proportions down right, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted to grab that particular panel. Not only did it remind me of Jagger's hairstyle in this issue and her dress, but also his face, which again I haven't drawn in a bit. So Taki's going to do something amazing with this, and I can't wait to see the final product of it. Now, after I did those, that was a big section of the day. The rest of it became about, so here's the whole thing together. The rest of it came about building the rest of this out. So what I mean by building the rest of this out, you can see here in issue, this is the issue 3 cover. I think under, this was the original kind of loose sketch that I did. And this was just indicating that there's going to be these kind of Escher sort of, what was that film? Inception style buildings, just in different angles and disproportionate and just weird. And the mob bosses are going to be back here, and here's Jagger. And that was the basic concept for the cover. And then on top of that, I did this other layer. Didn't use any reference or anything for this, just what Jagger would be looking at back at us. And she's got these big VR goggles on, and doing this weird thing with her fingers where I just wanted her sort of pinching her own thumb. It's like her only sign of tension while she's facing off the bosses. It's something nobody else will probably notice, but hopefully subconsciously it seeps through in some way. And more interesting than her hands just being down by her side. I don't know, it's probably too little for anybody to notice, but it's the sort of thing that I try and keep track of as I'm working. Let's see, for issue 4 cover, this was originally more complicated. It was going to involve Jagger holding this bowl. This is out of the issue. There's a ceremony where she's being brought into the mob. I forget the phrase, but anyway, she's got this bloody bowl and she's holding it. And I want to play off that famous Cersei painting, I believe by Waterhouse, um, just to sort of, play off the sense of her power. Um, and now I think in the original layout, which I might not have it here, her figure was a lot more. No, I think it was probably here. It was. Pardon me. I find the layers. Yeah, I think maybe it was pulled back a little bit more. It wasn't a full body picture, but Brian suggested two things. He was like, get rid of these other elements. So this is part of the ceremony where she's getting her finger cut open. And then later on in the issue, there's this thing where Val is with a girl and a mob guy shows up and kidnaps him or something. And Brian's just get rid of these other elements. And it was a great call, not only because it gets cluttered, but when we look at, I should have numbered all these. When we look at the cover as a whole, now we'll have this nice close-up, as opposed to all these full-bodied shots and chaos that's going around. And then I decided to actually bring it in closer, which I really like. I like this even more than I like that. I think it's going to stand out really strong. And again, paying attention that this is a cover that travels. So we want to make sure that there's these overlapping elements between each of them. I might have gotten too far on this, but I don't mind. So issue 3 cover, or issue 4 cover, close-up of Jagger, overlapping both sides. Black here, there's still going to be this bullet line going across the page, except it's going to go behind her. And on top of this whole thing is of the bullet line is going to be a cityscape that travels across the country with us, so different locations around the world. And this line will be going behind her. It'll go over some of these other characters, and behind Valentine as well. And the sense of it is that it's going to cut off the mob bosses' heads. Basically, it shows that these two are pretty invulnerable through the story. They're the ones at the center of our story. Ultimately, something might happen to them. I don't know, but right now, this is about their ascension. So, they're going to cut through everybody metaphorically. This took me most of the day. This is the issue 5 cover. See how many layers. So before I got to this layer where you can kind of see everybody, I did several layers that looked like this. So you can see how it's super light here. This was sort of my first pass in just getting the shapes. I didn't use much photo reference here. I think I looked up some gunfight photo reference that I had, some gun poses, but I didn't even paste it here or copy it over as far as I'm aware. I just took a look at it. It gave me an idea of how to position the characters, or at least Jagger, and then everything else kind of fell into place. So I just kept building and sketching out loosely this big crazy fight of them like kind of stumbling on top of each other and fighting with each other. I do several layers of that before that are missing here. I just didn't keep them because they became extraneous and it was a lot of work. Till eventually I got to the point where each character I drew in a different color so that I can see their bodies and not get lost over whose leg this is, whose leg this is. Now I'm still going to need to do tons of like shading in here. This guy in the foreground is going to be mostly in black with just barely some highlights. Probably black background, and then again, this bullet line going across with the cityscape. But this is both challenging and fun. It really was. All these characters, and trying to get their proportions right because, like, even his hand is a little small for me. This guy's arm was really weird and wonky. This was really wonky. This was a tough guy to figure out. But eventually it's all come together, I think, nicely, and I'm really looking forward to inking this. Then the final issue cover, Jagger, I was going to have her I was going to have her. Here's the reference that I pulled over here. This will be interesting, I think. So she's in this dress in the final issue, and originally I was going to have her in this costume because of her ascension, but I think she's going to be dressed more classic mob boss, heavy lighting from above, very Godfather. You can also see here how I grabbed photo reference and just put it next to the drawing. I'm not actually tracing over it, or which I could. It would, I could still totally make these mine. But I was just looking for the poses, exactly where does the knee fit underneath the other knee when they're crossed. She's going to have pants on, so this will be good reference for me for the pants. I was trying to do this up flip of the shoe here. See how her foot kind of comes up, and you can see a little bit underneath. But then it looked too playful. It looked like she was almost like kicking her foot or something. So this feels a little wonky because she's crossing her feet, so her left foot and her right foot are swapped over. But I'll play around with it a little bit more until I feel like I'm happy with it. So again, just pulling down this photo reference, tons of help. Sometimes when you have trouble, earlier you saw I had Taki pose for this hand photo, and I just had to trace it. I tried drawing it several times. I tried posing it out myself. It's not that I couldn't draw it, it's more like I couldn't figure out the positioning, and it was tough. So yeah, there's tons and tons of ways to use photo reference. You'll see that theme streamed throughout all of these videos, and hopefully you'll find your way and you'll find something that's comfortable for you. Again, don't listen to what anybody else says. I don't mean anybody but me, but I mean you listen to what you feel is right. There are no rules. I hate art cops. I hate artists telling other people what's right or what wrong, or you can't use photo reference, or don't use digital, or don't use this, or don't use that. It's all fair game. And if you know much, I don't know much about art history, but the little bits that I know, all artists were using as much photo reference as they could. Even before there was photo reference, you had those weird projector mirror things that they would use in the 15th century to project an image and be able to trace over it. Every artist would use any tools that they could. And sure, not everybody could be a Jack Kirby. Jack didn't need anything but a number 2 pencil and a ruler and a basement, and he created everything. But we're not all that. Oh, it's a weird babble. Sorry. So where are we now? I think right now I'm going to work on this on the issue 2 cover. So let me shut off some of these other layers to just not be distracting. There's so many ways I can do this. I feel like I could also go and grab, there's a PDF of the issue. So there's this VR situation going on. Part of me wants to go in and just grab these backgrounds and I could reuse it. It would be appropriate for a bunch of different reasons. Like one, I am recreating these scenes from the inside of the book to the outside of the book. So grabbing and repeating these panels would be fine. But they also might not line up. I don't know. And this is a good opportunity to show you another tool that I love in Clip Studio. There are several different ways to use this. They have perspective perspective rulers. So what I'll typically do is go over to its layer, ruler, create a perspective ruler. You can pick 2, different, 3, all these perspective points. I'm going to start on this building down here at the bottom, so we're just going to do 2-point perspective. So this gives us our horizon line. The horizon line is where your eye is whenever you're looking at a scene. So whatever your eye level is, by your eye level, I mean the viewer, the person who's viewing this picture, right? And then there's these perspective points. This is going to be tough because it puts the perspective ruler all the way at the bottom of this. So let me make sure I close out these other. All right. This will make it a little easier. So now I'm going to find my perspective points. You can see I did a very loose sketch here. The loose sketch of the building isn't precise, but it's certainly enough to, give me an idea of what the perspective points are going to be. So on the horizon line here, I'm going to grab, there's these little points, these little round spots here. See how this does this? So it feels like that's out a little far, so I'm going to bring it in closer. And I kind of want it to line up somewhere in between the way I have this line and this line, so let's bring it in closer. Yeah, that feels like it's lining up nice with whatever it was I was thinking in my head. Now let's find the perspective point over here. That's not lining up, so let's bring it in closer. And also, like, how did I do this freehand? Honestly, it just comes with experience. So I know that's a horrible piece of advice. All I can say is you will get there. You will get to a point where you can just freehand, freeball, I don't know what the word is. You can eyeball it. You can eyeball where your perspective is going to be and just sketch it out. If you can't do that, then you want to start with your perspective point, your horizon line, and start laying out perspective lines, and you'll find the art in there. Mike Hawthorne, again, he is a master of this stuff. He doesn't use these digital tools to make his elaborately constructed buildings where you can see every window frame, the depth within that window frame. It's crazy. He does it all by hand. So you find his channel and his social medias, and he has a Patreon where he'll teach all this stuff, and he's just amazing. So there's also different kinds of lines I can do here now. Let me make sure I'm on the right cover, issue 3. Let's label this building. Now I could use a straight line. And this is what this perspective point does. Look at that. It does it all for you. You can also sketch out like this, which I should probably do. Actually, I'll do that with the other buildings. They'll get more intricate. This one up front, I feel like I can see, I feel in my bones that I can just go ahead and start inking it. I'm going to use a brush though. And again, what's cool, look at this. Now I can make these perfect brush lines with this ruler. Sometimes these can be tricky. Sometimes the perspective tool, for whatever reason, will sort of act up on me, and it won't line up. Oh, which reminds me, I always want to go back to the perspective tool. That little square thing is what the perspective tool is for. And I want to mark on my building here where I have my perspective points. Wait, I did something wrong. Oh, no, it's there. Okay. And I'll usually use some color. And I want to do that in case my perspective tool gives out on me. If something goes wrong, if I shut the program down and it didn't save correctly, this will show me where I had those perspective points lined up. I should probably have created another layer and just called it that, but I'm lazy. So let's just go right into inks here now. Isn't it cool how it lines it up for you? I could do this in third person perspective, or third point perspective, where I have these kind of the building kind of coming out like this as well. It does get more complicated to do that. It's not too much work; it's just more work. And that's okay. But right now, I'm just not. I'm not ready for that. And there's going to be all this other more importantly, there's all this other variation. This kind of Escher-esque like aspect that's going to happen on this part of the cover. So it won't look flat because I didn't do a third point perspective. There's so much more that's going to go on to give this cover dimension. When you're doing rooftops and you're doing these inner parts here, just remember it's pretty dimensional, meaning there's a thickness to these ledges. It's not just a line, but you know, that's probably like a foot up, you know, or 2 feet high ledge. So you want to give it some depth here. If I was smarter, I would just zoom in on here, but I'm lazy. There we go. So much effort. Again, this would be great for all my shortcuts, but I just have a bad habit of not using my shortcut keys sometimes. Part of it's a weird thing. Like right now, I have I'm drawing my right hand, and my left hand is just in my pocket instead of leaning on my keyboard or my shortcut keypad. And I don't know what that's about. It's just a weird habit. I could be working with 2 hands, but I'm working with 1 for some reason. I'm going to create another layer for these water towers. Well, actually, I'm really just doing the base of the water towers right now. And there's a whole art to these water towers. There's a whole way that they work. They've got like a system of ladders around them. There's all this stuff going in and out of the actual water tower. But I'm just kind of bullshitting it. And that's okay. You know, it depends on how realistic your work is, you know. So I'm going to lower the opacity and create yet another layer. Just to do the tops of this. And I could bust out like the circle template. The circle template would even work with the perspective. Like, check this out. That would not work. Oh, but that works. Look at that. And then I could trace this line to be sort of a perfect round thing here for a contour for the roof, but I'm not going to. Partially because this is my weird thing of like, I like to mix straight lines with hand-drawn lines. It gives a sense, and I say sense, not natural. It gives it a sense of life. For me, often I'll say that it's for me because that's just not true for everybody. I'm sure there's people who will watch me do this and go, that's nuts. That's stupid. That's a waste of energy. Why would he do it like this? Why would he do it like that? It's because there's not a right or wrong way. And I see too many people kind of bullied into thinking they have to do things a certain way, especially in art. It's a weird thing. Art is supposed to be about expression, right? Not being totally locked into rules, especially somebody else's rules. And if you're watching us to learn stuff, first thing you gotta learn is you have to be happy with what you're doing. There's a lot of hours here at a comic book page, you know. And if you're not enjoying yourself, if you're not loving what you're doing, it's not a good life to be spending hours and hours on something and not enjoying it. Every now and then I'll have an assignment like that, but even then I'm still drawing the way I want and enjoying the hell out of myself. So like even the worst days are pretty great. All right, so I'm going to erase the stuff that I don't need here. Oops. Okay. All right, now these three little layers I'll combine together, and I could get even more dimensional with these, meaning instead of just having these black lines here that represent the boards and stuff, like I could give them an edge, like a secondary line. You know, go in like this, and I could do all that, but I'm not going to. Luckily, part of just the way that I chose to draw is it allows me to keep things simple and uncomplicated for me, which allows me to take more time when I need to take more time on something. So you've seen how I'll redraw figures and completely just start something over again. It's not as much of a loss for me as it might be for somebody else who drew some immaculately beautiful, perfect thing and go, you know what? Ultimately, conceptually, it works better to change it here. It doesn't feel like a horrible, horrible setback for me. But that's okay if that is your thing. If you know your art's more precious, it's totally legit. You know. Now I'll probably tighten these up, especially the roof, and you know I'll do details in here and stuff. And I guess since she's up front, really, I gotta go ahead and just ink her in first. Uh-oh. Oh, this is what's great. I'm happy for this. Let me show you one of the things I absolutely love about Clip Studio. So I accidentally drew this on the same layer as my sketch. Now, normally if I did this in Photoshop, it's just horrific. You have to cut all this out and kind of rework it and do a whole bunch of stuff. Here, it allows me to, let me make sure I'm not grabbing anything else on the page. Okay. Here, it allows me to just grab this black, cut it, paste, and it's completely separate from, oh, I grabbed it a little bit. Probably because my color margin, see, it's up really high here, so let me lower this down. I'll go back again. See, it's all, oops. Fine, now let me grab black. And make sure I didn't grab anything else. Yeah, it does different like that. Okay. Now I can cut and a paste. And yeah, I still have quite a little bit of the black from drawing underneath, but not that much. All right. And then I still have this separately. label that. All right, so building a safe. And normally that would take a long time to fix. And now this will be really fun. Just gonna get to ink Jagger. She's in the forefront of this cover. Let me check something real quick. I just get paranoid that I didn't accidentally grab anything else from any other layers and deleted it. Yeah, everything's there. All right, we're good. Sometimes that's another problem with working digitally is you can be up close on something. And not see that you've accidentally selected something else and deleted it. I've done that sometimes. All right, we're going to get right into coloring or inking Jagger. And since she's in the foreground of this, I'm going to keep her line work thicker than usual. Thick to thin movements. You can see I'm putting these little tiny quick changes in direction here, and it just gives the line a little bit of attitude instead of being almost cold from being so perfect and smooth, you know? When I first started working digitally, that was one of the problems I was having. I was like, God, this looks so smooth and perfect and clean and boring, lifeless. So it really took me a long time to figure out stuff. Like I would scan in original art, look at the lines that I was making with a real brush versus like a digital brush, and try and figure out how thick should I be getting, what's working, what isn't. How do I imitate a real brush as much as possible? And even though you can buy all these great pens, brushes out there from the Kyle brushes are like really popular and they're amazing. But you still can't let them do all the work. You still have to figure out how do you make it look, well, I was gonna say make it look as natural as possible, but I guess it depends on your style. Like, you know, there's super clean artists out there that they don't want it to look a little messy. You know, I think the messiness is what gives it life. But when you're super clean, you know, that's different. So let's put it this way: if you wanted to be like me, if you wanted to be like specific kind of artists, and you want that feel of life in there, then you should figure out how to imitate your digital brushes to feel as real as possible. And to me, they still feel miles away from my real natural brush. And there's stuff that I just can't do analog that I can do digitally when it comes to like a kind of brush style, because a real brush can't always imitate, well, in the same way that a digital brush can't always imitate what a real brush does. Real brushes can't always imitate what a digital brush does. Like this specific kind of turn right in here, I have trouble getting with the brushes that I use. Maybe if I was using a quill pen or something different, I could get that exact kind of line. I can do thin to thin, but there's a really minute difference, and mostly it's only me. It's only my mind's eye. Maybe I'm the only one who sees it. I've been told time and time again that most of what I think are different styles in my work, other people just don't see. So I shouldn't point it out because it just draws attention to something that otherwise nobody would look at. And unrelated, that's another sort of great piece of general advice. Don't give caveats for your work. Like, don't give an excuse ahead of time if you didn't have the time to finish something, or it doesn't look as good as you think that it should look, or you know, um, whatever reasons they may be, because a, you're projecting that there's a problem when there may not be a problem, that whoever you're handing it to would not see otherwise or think of otherwise. And sometimes you're actually creating a problem there where there wasn't one. You know, you're creating a lightning rod to your work where normally it could just be judged on its own. But if you say to somebody, "Oh man, I want to do better on this, but I just didn't have time," that suddenly they'll see stuff in the work that they wouldn't have seen before and be like, "Oh yeah, it does look rushed." Whereas if you didn't say anything, they might not have thought that. They think it looks beautiful. But as soon as you tell them that you didn't have time, they'll see those imperfections not as life, but as a rushed thing or something. So don't give copyouts for your work. Just hand it in. No excuses. And if you get criticisms for your work, listen, absorb, even if it hurts. No need to fight back or argue, even if you think that person's wrong, because again, art sometimes just have the beholder kind of thing. And study fabric and folds. I wish I studied them more, and instead I feel like I got to a good place where I can imitate them, but I'm not sure how legit they feel. So I have to eyeball it and guess. But you can figure it out. Jagger has this like asymmetrical haircut. Why? Um, and if you're at all impressed with like the long smooth lines, keep in mind two things. I'm working digitally, so the stabilization tool really helps me to just make everything perfect as I'd like it to be or would want it to be. And also, there's 30 years of practice behind me. So even if I was doing this freehand, most of these lines would be just as clean as this. The big difference is um, the finer details are harder to get depending on the tools that I'm using. And I hate how long it takes for ink to dry. I smudge the crap out of my work because I'm relatively fast. And yeah, I end up doing a lot of smudging. And I hate that. So that's another reason why I often work digitally, because I just don't have time to draw a line and then wait for it, or move somewhere else and try and consciously not move my hand in such a way that it would end up smudging or otherwise being a problem. And the other reason I'm saying that is like, so I don't want to discourage anybody. Be like, oh my god, this is what it's supposed to be like to be professional, to draw lines this quickly and smoothly. Um, Again, it's just, I'm sure there are things you can do in your life that you've been doing for 20, 30 years or all your life, and you make it look easy. But it's not easy. It's just years and years and years of practice. And the tools, like I said, digitally. I love digital tools, but let's not fool ourselves and pretend like they're not doing a lot of the heavy lifting for us. It's one of the reasons why, and this is a little soapboxy and old manny, so I apologize. It's why I think every artist, if you're working digitally, should have a foundation in uh, working traditionally, because these digital tools can do so much for you. Like when I was showing you the perspective tool, it took me years to wrap my head around proper perspective and to learn all these different tools and how to set up lines that are perspective lines that are way off the page. Um, and you might be like, well, you don't have to do that anymore, so why would you bother? But in learning those techniques, it helps you get a deeper understanding of perspective, and then that understanding serves you when you're working digitally. To the point, it can be obnoxious sometimes. I'm watching a film, and I can see that whoever did the post work, the background is being transposed into the scene, and I can see that the horizon line's not correct. It happens in cars all the time when people are driving in cars and television shows. I can see that the perspective line is just not that the horizon line isn't correct to the eye line, and it looks weird. And that's because somebody probably learned to do all that digitally and never learned how to the core concepts of um, perspective. Okay, old man rant done. But that said, I'm sure there's plenty of young people and new artists who feel the exact same way. You know, you always go back to the basics, no matter how long ago they were established or out of touch they seem. They're there for a reason. I still think that like if you look at the Marvel handbook, like how to draw comics the Marvel way from like this is the 70s or early 80s, there's a lot of it that feels out of touch, or is out of touch or feels antiquated, but the basics are still absolutely true. And I still think it's the best starting book for anybody to learn comics from. Um, yeah, I could be wrong though. It all depends on who you are, what you're looking for. And please don't take anything I say too seriously. You know, you got to find, just pick out the parts that sound true to you and feel right, and discard the rest. And I think that's true for almost anything, especially creatively. Okay, I'm gonna hit the save button on this. It's gonna take me a minute. 6 covers, 600 DPI, 100 layers, something like that. It takes a while to save. Oh, but I got this open, so I can show you a little bit more of the issue. Try not to do too many spoilers here. I was really happy with the way this turned out. Had to have this kind of made up futuristic motorcycle thing. Oh, look at that. God, I love Taki's colors. Like even these abstract colors, they all say something. They all create a mood. I mean, she tells a story with her colors. I give her so little and she does so much. It's like wild abstract and yet it doesn't call too much attention to itself. It's crazy. Still trying to save. I love this. Like just how simple this is. Like her cuts here are simple and it's did these fades. Um, didn't have to do a bunch of rendering or line drops, and it looks magical, man. And you see the line work I gave her is so simple. There's not a lot to do with, and somehow she does this magic trick where it's simultaneously simple and looks like there's a whole bunch done. All right, so this is what I call the coloring book pass. So there's no heavy blacks in here yet. I've not sure how much heavy black I'll use. I'm going to change it so I don't like how this too many wrinkles are in here. This is just too jammed up. It should be more like this. I got to lighten this section up. But yeah, I'll go in later with another layer where I'll lower the opacity and then I'll just drop in a bunch of shadows and see how it looks. Although actually there may not be that many shadows for this cover because she's in this kind of VR sort of place. All right, so I'm gonna put little locks on these layers so I don't accidentally draw on top of stuff that I don't want to. Go back down here to the perspective tool. Now I'm going to totally move this perspective tool around. Actually, I think now I need to do a three-point perspective. All right, so this gets really complicated with the size, the proportions, and just how large it is. Now I can grab these little corners here, and what I'm doing is I'm changing the horizon line, so I'm turning it. See, I want it to be more like this. Because these buildings back here are, this is all in a sort of virtual reality world. So everything is going to be in these abstract shapes. I'll lower that some, it feels like. Yeah, I want this, you can see the horizon line here. Yeah, the eyeball's got to be under there, so. All right, that's good from there. On this side. All right, so this is where the lines are going to be coming closer from here. I kind of feel like it needs to be even lower then. There we go. Before going with the full inks for the oops, shit, I almost drew right over it again. All right, that's Jagger. All right, create another layer. Okay, this time I'm going to kind of sketch out the building some. I'll use a different color too. I don't always use a different color, but I've been finding that color coding my layers starts to help. In fact, since this color, I'll keep it solid. Ah, shit. I did not set up my perspective tool right. There's a third perspective line here. Where is it? It's the problem with using three-point perspective digitally. It can really get tricky. And oh, here it is. It's way up here. Oh yeah, that feels about right. Okay. Now I'm not gonna lie to you. I'm pretending like I know everything that I'm doing here. I don't. I don't use the three-point perspective a lot because it does get complicated for me, for my dumb head. what I'm trying to do is also make sure that I have the building line up in a way that creates a good um, composition around her. I want her to feel framed by this. See, and what I'm looking out for is when this line comes out from behind her head, I don't want it lined up directly with her lips because it's going to create a weird tangent where the lines from her mouth will suddenly come out into the building. So I'm making sure it goes above. Look how great this tool is. Like, it's just helped me just freehanding this building. This crazy perspective. And now I have to keep in mind that this is now going into this other cover. And I'm going to keep these buildings really simple. I'm not going to get too much into individual windows. On a couple shots I will, but not on everything. Especially on this because I know as this goes out into this other cover, it's going to... Yeah, actually, I mean, I don't want... I want her shoulder actually to cover this, so this stuff won't even matter. I want her figure to overlap everything else. So even this... no, you know what? I'll probably keep that. I'll probably keep that part overlapping so she's in between. I think that'll look cool. But I'm going to erase this just so that I don't keep drawing it. I know I won't have to go much further than that. Oh, I wish I'd grabbed coffee before I came up here. Actually, that's probably... I'll go get some coffee after. After I set this initial part up. Buildings have these weird patterns to them too. So this top floor might be a little more like have these lines. I don't want it here because it's going to get weird around her face. Is that right? Something's wrong here. It's hard for me to tell because it's all sideways. No, this is right. Yeah, okay. I'm going on about learning the basics of perspective, and I can't tell if I set this up right or not. I probably didn't, but it looks all right, so all right. Actually, it would have been smarter for me to just do these like with these straight lines like this, so there's no variation, and I could line up everything a little bit better. Get down here, I'll put some... No, is that what's wrong? Huh. Shit. No, that's right. Oh, welcome to my head, everybody. Welcome to my head. And well, I'll show you this stuff when I'm making the page later. You can select the area sort of in between here and then have a bunch of lines going so that you can quickly move your lines, but you're not creating lines where you don't want them. There's all kinds of neat stuff you can do. Yeah, it's kind of hard for me to read almost because we've got these different perspective lines going everywhere. But again, that's going to really sort of serve it as well. Now I'm going to have this weird lines coming here because there is a slightly different city than a real city, so you'll see what I mean later. Okay. Now I'm going, before I do the next layer, I'm going to have to ink this so that I just don't lose it. I don't lose my perspective points and stuff. I didn't mark down where I want to keep them either. But I think you can tell I need coffee. So I'm going to pause it here. It's a good break. It's been an hour straight. I'm going to get some coffee. I'm going to save this. And we'll be back and make these buildings.